Hello, well, thank you for joining us, Helen and Paul. It's wonderful
My
that you can
pleasure.
share your project and what you've done and why you've chosen the Athena blind with a white fabric, um, and sharing that with other customers. They'll find it really useful, I'm sure. But first of all, I'd like you to cast your minds back to the distant past when your extension was just a figment of your imagination. And maybe Helen, you could tell us about, why you decided to have an extension, and maybe Paul, you could explain afterwards, how you plan to use the space.
Yeah, okay. So we bought this 1960s bungalow in some years ago, and it was in need of a lot of renovation. So we've completely renovated it and turned it around and repurposed a number of the rooms. And there was a very small kitchen, but a very large garden. So it made sense that we move out into the garden and put a lounge diner on the back, to turn it into sort of open plan living. So it's now more like a very big apartment, really. So it just suits our style of living, really. So, Paul?
Yeah, so effectively we were looking for the inside out look and feel. So we've got the bifolds along the back. We've got shading in the lounge so the TV doesn't get glare. But then when it came to this space, we realized it's quite deep. It's over 6 meters deep, and that there's very little light at the back. So we started playing with the idea of a skylight. And then we started realizing that lots of glass, lots of heat. And that's heat gain from the sun as well as heat loss in the winter. So we effectively started putting solar glazing into the bifolds, and we realized we needed a blue tint solar control on the skylight, which we put in. We were then thinking about air movement because deep, large spaces don't often get much air movement. So we thought it was a great idea to make skylights, put two skylights in at the top that had openable lights, so that they're motorized. So effectively, as it gets hot in the summer, we can open the bifolds, open the openable lights and flush the space. And for a number of years, that worked really well. We've always struggled a bit in peak summer, especially on the hot days. With the blinds down on the bifolds, you definitely walk in from outside and feel the house is cooler. But there's still a lot of sun and energy coming down through that skylight, and it causes a bit of glare and it causes a hot environment. And we have two dogs, so when we're out for the day, we don't want the dogs getting too hot. So there's a whole thought process of how we controlled it. So that's kind of the environment we wanted and how we ended up with the skylight, the solar control, the blinds on the bifolds.
Yeah, and when you realize it gets too hot and actually a bit uncomfortable for your two dogs as well, what options did you look at to try and sort the problem out? And maybe Helen,
Yeah, so the immediate solution was climb up on the roof and throw a tarpaulin over the skylight, which we've done for several years. It's not difficult because we've got access to our flat roof, but clearly that was a bit of a pain. Paul's done quite a lot of research, and we'd looked at internal blinds, but also external blinds, so actually keeping the glass cool in the first place. Which has its positives, but where we ended up was thinking, oh, actually, if we do something inside, it will help us in the winter as well as in the summer, because if we get the right kind of blind, then we can, we lose a lot of heat out of that skylight in the winter time. We've got a nice log burner in the corner over there, and that heats the whole house, not just this space. It heats the whole house if you leave doors open, but quite a lot disappears up there. So that's why we ended up choosing an internal blind system.
Well, you certainly researched it very, very well and thought it through, from your solar glass all the way to the an internal blind. And maybe Paul, did you look at several companies when it came to choosing an internal blind?
Yes, we did. To be fair, Helly did most of the research into that. But I think I think the ultimate was looking at also the different types of options. There aren't many companies that do the system that you're proposing that we've installed. Lots of them are actually on the glass itself. Like you can do traditional, like in conservatories and things. And that most certainly wasn't the look and feel we were after. And obviously videos like this we saw on your website, which was great, confidence booster, and the service you provided and assistance you gave us from day one was starting to help us take faith in the fact that we were going to work with a good supplier and get a good product.
Thank you. So you met Chris, and presumably on a video conference like this one.
Exactly that. Yeah.
And what was that experience like?
So that was a positive experience, mostly because Chris is not a traditional salesman. He spent time talking to us about what our needs were, which I suppose every salesman likes to think they do well. But he demonstrated a technical knowledge of the kinds of problems that we had. So he understood it, he very quickly established what our needs were, and then was able to explain in quite detailed terms. And I don't know whether you gather, but Paul is quite technical. He knows about this stuff quite well. So I think you and Chris found that you could have quite an intelligent conversation about it. Yep. Chris knew his engineering. I guess he's an engineer by trade, is he?
Mechanical engineer originally.
Yeah. Okay. So he clearly knew his onions and was able to quickly get to the heart of what we required.
Yeah. No, thank you for that feedback. You'd be very pleased with that feedback, I think. And we're quite happy not to be salesy. We just need to give the facts so you can make the right decision for you. Yeah. So and then you chose the Athena blind. What took you to the Athena blind?
Oh, well, we were looking at different fabrics, different look and feel. It's part of the annual use of the blind and the purpose of the blind. So initially you have a skylight, it's giving you light all year round. So the natural reaction is to go for the fabrics that are perforated, that enable light, diffuse light to come through. But the more we were thinking about our winter scenario.
It's the frame, isn't it? That's the key with the Athena. The frame is lovely and thin. There's only a box at one end. Some of the other models we looked at.
I see. Okay,
boxes, because the fabric, you can pick and choose the fabrics, can't you, between the different models? But it's the frame that's nice and discreet. And I'm sure we'll see that in a minute when we open it up. But yeah. And the lightweightness of it.
Yeah. And the Athena blind is has a great attention across the fabric.
Yeah.
And the slightly smaller models designed for slightly smaller roof lights, which means it's even flusher. I mean, it is flush across the range, but it's particularly flush with your Athena.
Yeah, less likely to get gathering with this model is our understanding. So that's good. Yeah.
I mean, you can see behind us, it looks like an integral part of the ceiling. It's very clever.
Yes. And so you chose window treat, which we're delighted about. And how did the survey installation process go for you?
Yeah, were you here when the good boys came for survey? I can't remember.
Yeah, no, it's very smooth.
Yeah, so they the guys came. They're very pleasant. They're a very pleasant team. And they talked again. Martin's very technical. He talked to us about all the options, didn't he?
Yeah.
About where we might want to position it.
Yeah.
We've got ideas of putting the cassette along the long flank so that you couldn't see it when you walked in, but actually when you see it's quite discreet anyway. So we changed our minds after talking to Martin about what we wanted. So that was good. That the survey was quick. The installation itself, again, it was nice to see the same team coming back for the installation that had done the survey. So we already knew the guys. They arrived pretty much when they said they would. They were here for a long time. I was quite surprised how long it took to install, but they just got on with it. They didn't pull on my time. They very important to us. They took the time to get to know our girls, our dogs, which meant we didn't have to shut them away. And the boys just got on with their job and finished up and left the site clean and functional.
Yeah.
What more could you ask?
Yeah, and then maybe jumping ahead, but the quality of the finish, I'm very impressed with, and I'm quite particular. I get quite wound up when people come and do jobs and I end up finishing them off for them. But I have to say, I'm looking up at the blind. I can't tell where they've run the electric cables. You can't tell they've been up there. You've just got this fantastic finished new looking blind in there. So really good quality of installation.
Well, thank you. I'll pass that on to them.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. And important is, I mean, you spoke about the heat loss, the heat gain, and I guess glare was probably possibly less of an issue, but those two, heat loss, the thermal comfort side was important to you. Has it done the job?
Yeah, first night.
Well, we can't tell obviously with the sun but we're hoping to in the summer, but certainly with the heat loss. So the very first time we closed it, straight away, this area of the room is as toasty as where the fire is, whereas before you could feel a change in temperature when you approach the skylight, and now you can't. So not only, hopefully, I'm hoping to see my gas bills come down a little bit because I don't always have the fire on. And it's certainly, the girls sleep just here at the end of the table, so it's a much more comfortable night's sleep for them because there's no draft anymore. Not that it's drafty, but it was definitely the air was cooler, and now I don't think we can tell the difference, can we?
No. And when I work underneath it, sometimes when I open the blind in the morning, I'll get up early, the blind will be shut, I'll be working away, and then I'll decide, oh, it's daylight, I'll open the blind and get some light, and I instantly feel the cold downdraft coming down on top of me. So the odd time I've closed it again and waited a few hours for the sun to really start warming the space up. Which
is fine, because we've got the choice, because we've got the bifolds. The room is not particularly dark anyway. So, if we want to leave it shut all day, if it's, let's say it's snowing, we could leave it shut all day, and it would keep the house nice and toasty.
And I think on a technical point, we had an issue with condensation in the winter before the blind was put in. It would get drips onto the table every now and then. You'd look up at the frame and there'd be a lot of moisture. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I put an electric heater up there, and that helped it. But there was still a lot of condensation around the lower levels. And since the blind's been in, when I'm retracting the blind, there's a lot less condensation in there. Even the dog's agreeing with me. So it's obviously a good result.
Yes. Well, you seem very adept, Paul. Helen wasn't wrong when you were talking about you as a technically orientated. To achieve all that and that understanding. Well done, you. And I've got just a couple of questions left. Probably the most important one, this $6 million question, is: would you recommend Window Treat to friends and family?
Of course, naturally.
Yeah. I will say it's a quality product, and you pay for what you get for. You know what you get.
Yeah.
So it's not cheap. But anybody that wants to make that investment, and it is an investment, I would say, then yeah, I would highly recommend Window Treat.
And that's a really good point, Helen, because blinds tend to be designed to go vertically and drop, right? A horizontal blind that's flush to your ceiling is a completely different animal.
Yeah.
And a totally different set of engineering.
Yeah.
And, it does become an investment. You're absolutely right.
And when you look at where you're located it, and we all expect it just to operate, you don't want to be changing it 3-5 years time, having trouble with it over a couple of years. You want it to be put in first time and last. So that was our investment decision. Do it once, do it right, and enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's the engineering in that will deliver a huge life expectancy on the blind. In fact, you've got a 5-year no quibble warranty, haven't you? Where if anything goes wrong, we'll come out and sort it out. It's short of putting a hole through it or something, but everything else is covered.
Fingers crossed.
So fingers.
Yeah, which is why we don't do the pleated blinds that go through, on the glazing, or even as a a similar blind to this, because we don't get the longevity and don't get problems. But that's great. Last thing, can I be cheeky and ask you to open and shut the blind? And
Go for it.
Oh, we like this feature as well. The fact that we can stop it anywhere we like, which means, as Paul said, he works at the dining room table. So in the summer, if he just wants to block out the sun but still keep some light coming in, he can do that.
And while that's opening, that was the end result as to why it's opening, closing rather, to the north, and it opens from the north, because the depth of the ceiling void, as you can see, the upstand before the glass enables a 45-degree cutoff with a high-angle sun, so you could just stop it.
Technical.
Just that point where you can get natural daylight down to where I'm working below, while still keeping the sun out. Works really well.
well, thank you, and thanks for the explanation as well, Paul. That's fantastic. Very, very quiet, isn't it?
Yeah, it just sounds like a quiet fan. We've noticed.
Yes, and here we can see the abundant light you have, and it will significantly reduce you'll be comfortable in the summer too, much more comfortable than before. It'll make a real difference too. But thank you for sharing your story and your experience with our customers. That's really kind of you.